Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our ordinary meeting of Council on the 18th of October 2022. As the meeting chair, I give my consent for this open council meeting to be streamed live, recorded and published online. Anyone who is invited to read out a question or a presentation will be recorded, and their voice, image and comments will form part of the live stream and recording. The Chair and/or CEO have the discretion and authority at any time to direct the termination or interruption of live streaming. Such direction will only be given in exceptional circumstances where deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory, or potentially inappropriate to be published. The stream will stop prior to the closed section of the meeting and will recommence for the conclusion of the meeting. The public is able to view this live stream via the website at www.pyrenees.vic.gov.au. Should technical issues prevent the continuation of the stream, a recording will be made available on our website. Please stand for the opening prayer. Heavenly Father, we ask you to give your blessing to this council, direct and prosper its deliberations to the advancement of your glory and the true welfare of the people of the Pyrenees Shire. Amen. Please be seated. We acknowledge the people past and present of the Wallarong, Jar Jar Wurrung, Eastern Maar and Watchabollock tribes whose land forms the Pyrenees Shire. We pay our respect to the customs, traditions and stewardship of the land by the elders and people of these tribes on whose land we meet today. Everybody's here, so there are no apologies. Any notices of disclosure of interest by councillors or officers? No, none. Confirmation of the previous minutes. That the minutes of the ordinary meeting of council held on 20th of September 2022 and the special meeting of council held on the 27th of September 2022, as previously circulated to councillors, be confirmed. Moved Councillor Ferrari, seconded Councillor Clark. All those in favour? Carried. Is there any business arising from those minutes? I see none. Thank you. Is there any questions? No. No questions.
You don't need to read all the preamble, given that there's no questions.
No.
Just if there's questions from the gallery. So,
are there any questions or submissions from the? In that case, we'll read the preamble. Members of the public are encouraged to ask questions of council at ordinary council meetings. Members of the public may attend the meeting in person to verbally ask a question. All attendees must register by midday on the day of the meeting to ensure council adheres to the number of attendees under the COVID safe plan. To register, either call 1300 797 363 or visit www.pyrenees.vic.gov.au regarding attendance. Members of the public who are unable to attend in person can participate in question time by submitting their questions in writing, either online through the council's website, by mail or hand delivered. A person can ask a maximum of 2 questions at any one meeting on any topic, and the questions and responses shall not exceed 5 minutes. Questions are to be received by 12 noon on the day of the meeting. Questions are read by the chairperson during public participation. The chairperson or councillor or council officer to whom the question is referred may immediately answer the question or take the question on notice for the next ordinary meeting. Questions? Trevor.
Firstly, apologies, I haven't followed protocol normally right in, but I haven't been able to get to my computer today or yesterday. My question is a simple one. It's reiterating a question I've had before. The Pyrenees Shire, welcome to Pyrenees Shire Council Road sign on Western Highway. How is that proceeding, if it is?
Mr. Gowans.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Mr Davies, for your question. My understanding is that the Welcome to Pyrenees signs are still under a signage project that's looking at branding, and until the branding exercise has been completed, those signs won't be replaced. But that branding program that's being run out of a different part of council is yet to finalise that work.
Thank you, Mr Gowans.
Thank you.
Councillors, items for noting. Are there any questions? Councillor Clark. Microphone.
Stand second. That's good. A couple of questions, Ms Brownell, if I could, about the CARS report, and more particularly about the new customer relationship management system. Ms Brownell, could you just give us a little bit of a sense of what you're looking at as to whether it's an off-the-shelf product or a product basically built specially for the two councils involved, and potentially maybe just a couple more timelines about the steps of the project, about when it might be able to be implemented? Just give us a bit of sense, please.
Thank you, Councillor Clark, for your question. We're looking at off-the-shelf products to save time and money. The timelines are likely to be, we're likely to go to procurement in early 2023. So sometime before the end of 2023, I would think that it might be in place.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Steve.
No other questions? Mr CEO, would you like to just give us a quick update on the flood situation?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm happy to provide this verbal report to Council and the community about the current situation in the Pyrenees Shire in respect of the flood event. Firstly, just to recognise that this event is a series of events that have occurred in the Pyrenees from the 6th of October right through to the 14th of October. And that's the event that's officially been recognised at a Commonwealth level in the Pyrenees. It's been recognised and registered with a unique identifying number, and that's relevant from the point of view of ensuring that future opportunity for claims financial assistance is made available. First, I'd like to recognise the fact that there has been significant impact in the Pyrenees Shire. And I'll just outline some of that impact. And at this point in time, a lot of the impact is actually not yet known fully. We are aware that a number of residents have been impacted, somewhere between 30 and 50 residents across the whole of the Shire, including Beaufort, Avoca, Natty Ellick, Amphitheatre, Lexington, Snake Valley and Landsborough. And for any residents that has had impact to the house, they are encouraged to contact the council to register their details and to report their impact, so that we can understand what sort of assistance we may be able to provide to those residents. Roads and bridges have been significantly impacted. Of course, the community would be aware that access was restricted because of the flood waters. Council works crews and others and contractors have been out and assisted in the to ensure that roads are closed in a timely way, and then as the waters receded, to have those roads reopened and once they assessed it being safe. At the moment, there still are a small number of roads that are closed. There has been some damage to bridges, major culverts and floodways across the Shire. Pleased to say that some of the works that previously happened after events in 2016 and 2011 appear to have reduced the amount of impact on our bridges and major culverts. There's been impact to public infrastructure at Avoca and Natty Ellick recreation reserves, toilet blocks, playgrounds, fencing, a range of other public infrastructure. There have been events across the Shire that have had to be cancelled, in particular the Lake Goldsmith Steam Rally event that was scheduled for October. That event the site of the Steam Rally event has had significant inundation. About 85% of the site there has had water through it. And the Avoca races were cancelled, of course. For our farming communities, significant crop damage appears to be evident, along with significant fencing impact in proximity to streams. We've had no reports of livestock having been lost, fortunately, at this point in time. And then, of course, there's a significant amount of environmental damage that's occurred, and a significant cleanup effort is required, Mr. Mayor, over the coming weeks and months. The control agency for this event is the SES. And of course, we recognise the fact that at a statewide level, there's been significant strain on resources at other parts of the country. And of course, in Pyrenees, the nature of the event here, being in the upper catchment of a number of river systems, is that the impact occurs pretty well immediately, whereas the impact in other communities, as we understand, in places like Shepparton and Chuka, occurs downstream, and that happens several days later. So for the Pyrenees, of course, not having a state emergency service presence within our shire, and the nature of the event being very immediate once the rain event occurred, meant that the response was necessary to be immediate from a point of view of council and other resources. I'd like to acknowledge the significant efforts of the Pyrenees Shire Council Works team and their willingness to respond to keep the community safe, and closing roads and assessing the impacts on our roads and bridges in those very first hours and days of the event. One of the functions of the control agency is to undertake a rapid impact assessment to get a clearer picture about what the extent of the impact of the event is. And at this point in time, the council has not received that rapid impact assessment. And so the impact that I've reported on just now has been from information that we've obtained from our own residents and from our own observations. But process is in foot now where resources have been deployed to undertake this rapid impact assessment using council staff and support from our neighbouring councils, as well as through contractors that work with the council team. So we will have people out on the roads and at those recreation facilities and in our communities gathering information to get a clearer picture of the impact over the coming couple of weeks. The estimate of the impact at this point in time, Mr. Mayor, is in the order of $15 million to public assets, and that's a figure that represents the value of the recovery effort that's going to be needed to restore these assets. We do encourage people that are in need of assistance with any cleanup associated with the flood event to contact council to report their needs. Information on the event is available on council website. We have resource centres in Avoca and Beaufort that are open daily, and that's a source of information for people, and also for people to be able to register their details. And of course, people can contact the council office during business hours. I'd like to recognise and thank the many volunteers in our community on behalf of the council who have been really prepared to step up and to assist each other, and that community support has been incredible in many of our communities, whether it be sandbagging or assisting in transportation of people to and from their places of residence. I'd like to recognise the emergency services as well, particularly thank the support of the Victoria Police, who have worked very closely with our council team. I'd like to thank our council staff, I said, certainly our work staff and our administrative staff who have worked and manned phones and prepared and assisted in responding to this event. I'd like to thank the community who have come forward with offers of assistance, our adjoining shires who have been willing to support us. In terms of the significance of this event when compared to other events, there is certainly evidence to suggest that the event as it occurred at Landsborough Amphitheatre and Lexington was really quite significant and potentially, the most significant event within the memory of most people. In Beaufort, it would appear that some of the works that had occurred to mitigate the impacts of flood after the 2011 event have been successful, and the event in Beaufort appeared to be below the 2011 event in terms of significance. And in Avoca, essentially there were two small events, and whilst those were completely different events in terms of the intensity of the storm, they were both quite significant, but below the 2011 event. Mr. Mayor, in terms of looking forward towards recovery, there's a lot of work being done right at the moment by the council team in preparing for the long-term recovery of our communities. We have engaged external resources to work with our team to do this. Of course, the importance of doing this is to ensure that our ordinary activities and our services are not impacted adversely by the fact that we have had an emergency event, because the recovery effort will take years. And of course, in the memories of some of our community, there will still be an expectation of services to continue. And that's what we're focused on doing. The clean-up right at the moment is a significant task, and they're thankful for the Victorian government for making available some funds for that to occur. And we do appreciate that in the short term, there has been an impact on our community as far as waste collection services. And we ask people to be patient with their waste collection. Of course, the nature of the event is such that many of our rural roads have been impacted, and it's made it very difficult for garbage collection trucks to access residential properties. So please be patient with us. And if you have any concerns, you're welcome to make contact to the office. And the final point to mention, Mr. Mayor, is the fact that this is there is still a threat of further activity from a weather perspective over coming weeks and months. And we ask people to remain vigilant and to keep an eye on the Emergency Services app and also the weather forecasting. Happy to take any questions, Mr. Mayor, but that seems to be a wrap.
Thank you, Mr. Nolan.
Just one
Mr.
question,
David.
Mr. Nolan. Are the transfer stations still operating?
Thanks, Mr. Davey, for your question. Yes, the transfer stations are open, and they are, they're accessible for people to be able to deposit their waste. If people have difficulty in being able to access the transfer station, they're welcome to contact us, and we can make arrangements for their waste to be collected. Obviously, when people have carpet and lots of hard waste that are very difficult to transport, we can make some other arrangements.
Thank you again, Mr. Nolan. Councillors, we have a recommendation for council notes the report. Moved Councillor Vance, seconded Councillor Keogh. All those in favour? Carried. Items for decision. 13.1. Krupp's gun. Mr. Nat Gowans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to provide council with further information relevant to determining an appropriate location for the reinstatement of the restored Krupp gun into the Beaufort Bicentennial Park, also known as the Beaufort Memorial Garden. The Beaufort Returned Soldiers League successfully obtained a grant to restore the Krupp gun that has been located outdoors in the Beaufort Bicentennial Park for many years. The restoration of the gun has now been completed, and the RSL and council are looking to have the gun reinstalled in the park. Throughout the restoration, the gun missing elements have been restored and replaced, including a leather seat cover, which now makes the gun not suitable to be being kept outdoors unprotected. The RSL seeks to see the restored gun installed within a structure that protects it from the elements, as well as limiting public access. Council considered a number of sites within the Beaufort Memorial Garden as a future appropriate location for the restored Krupp's gun. The site determined as Site 1 in the attachment, which borders Havelock Street, was determined to be the preferred location at the June 2022 council meeting. Council resolved that the area identified as Site 1 is the preferred location for the installation of a shelter to protect the restored Krupp gun. A submission was presented to council at the July council meeting, which sought council to review its decision and consider Site 3, which is at the western highway end of the Beaufort Memorial Garden and is directly opposite the Golden Age Hotel. The submission raised the concern that Site 1 position was not prominent enough to reflect the importance of the Krupp gun to the Beaufort community. The submission also had some concept plans of a shelter which was significantly smaller than what was previously indicated in the June report. Councillors met with representatives of the RSL and community members on site prior to the September council meeting, and a commitment was provided to reconsider the location based on a minimised shelter size and concept. The 3 sites that were previously identified gave consideration to a number of values, including sight lines and heritage values that need to be protected. The issues raised in the June report still apply. However, it is worth considering the Site 3 values if council wish to now consider this as the preferred site. The proposed Site 3 is a little further north than demonstrated on the site map in the location of, and it's now in the location of the existing picnic table. This site has limited capacity to accommodate the shelter and would be subject to some tree pruning. Whilst the significant view lines identified within council's heritage precinct policy are somewhat more protected through this option, the location is in close proximity to the formal entrance of the park and remains prominent in the key view line from the fire station and band rotunda. There are currently no council funds identified to progress the project. However, the RSL have indicated that there is some limited funding to progress the shelter and Krupp gun installation. It is highly probable that the cost of achieving a design and construction standard that is appropriate for the public realm will exceed the funds that are currently committed to the project. Although Site 1 is previously determined by council would have the least impact on heritage and streetscape values, it is the community's view that the site is not prominent enough to display an item of significance to the Beaufort community. Site 3 provides a location that the community would support while being considerate of the heritage and streetscape values based on the revised concept design. Therefore, it's the officer recommendation that council support Site 3 on the eastern corner of Havelock and Livingston Streets as the preferred site for the restored Krupp gun, and that council work with the Beaufort RSL to progress a shelter design that is appropriate for the protection of the Krupp gun and public park users.
Thank you, Mr. Gowans. Councillors, we have a recommendation. Moved Councillor Ferrari, seconded Councillor Clark. Councillor Ferrari.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I acknowledge that there's some members from the RSL here today, and I thank you for your attendance. And I acknowledge that the willingness of the RSL to work with the council to try and come up with a solution to this has been a bit of toing and froing. So we do appreciate that a great deal. And the council and the RSL will continue to work together to develop a suitable shelter
to house and protect the gun. And I think something else that's worth noting is that many people may not realise, but there's a significant, substantial historical significance attached to that gun. It's not just a gun. There's a substantial historical significance attached to that gun, and that's why it was wanted to be in a prominent place, and we need an appropriate shelter to cover it. But we'll continue to work together, and I'm sure we'll come up with a suitable resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ferrari. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just support Councillor Ferrari's comments. To me, the values of the memorial are paramount in this, and I think by moving site 3 back a little about where the tables are, that makes huge sense in terms of bringing that gun in a position where it is actually a much clearer public view. I do think this, in the discussions that we had in the park with the RSL, the size of the shelter is critical, and that really will, the smaller it is, the easier it will be for us to site it in that position. And I think we all recognise that. And just a question, if I could, to conclude, Mr. Gowans, I assume, Mr. Gowans, that our next step now obviously is to come up with a design, and on that basis then council can work on the process of how we actually might make a contribution towards it.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor, for your question. Yeah, that is the proposed pathway forward here to work with the community groups that have interest in this site to come up with a design that both meets their needs and the needs of council, being the caretaker of that park.
Any other councillors? Okay, all those in favour? Carried. Progress update and implementation of council resolution, future of aged care service delivery. Ms Bramwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report aims to provide the council and the community with an update of progress in delivering the resolution of council relating to item 15.1 of the council meeting held in July. At that confidential meeting on the 19th of July, council considered a report relating to the potential future direction of home-based aged care provision in the Pyrenees Shire. And the report sought direction from council following significant Commonwealth government reform in funding and delivery models that impact on the ability of local councils to deliver these services in the future. At that meeting, council resolved a range of actions to be implemented by officers, which are reiterated in the body of the report. And this report provides an update on progress made so far to keep the council and community informed. Actions undertaken today are detailed in the report, but just in summary, communications have been made with staff, clients, community and the relevant union. An engagement process with the broader community has been initiated through council's engagement hub and hard copy documentation. And I would like to reinforce to our community to please take advantage of the engagement process and provide feedback or complete the survey. And more information is available on the website, resource centres, or just by calling us. Surveys can be done online or in a paper copy. We'll try to make it as easy as possible for you. A consultant was appointed at the Proven Group to support officers through the expression of interest process. And that expression of interest process commenced last week, seeking interest in providing, asking people to contact us where there may be people interested in providing aged care services in the Pyrenees Shire in the future. And costings and service delivery options are being prepared for further reporting to council. A final report will be provided in December to inform council's decision making in this regard. And it's the officer recommendation that council receives this report, providing a brief progress update on the future of aged care service delivery and continues to provide support to staff during the review process. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Bramwell. Move Councillor Vance, seconded Councillor Kerr. Councillor Vance.
Council were briefed earlier today by a group of council employees, just informing us of the services that are provided. I firmly believe that every opportunity we have to keep our senior members of our community in their own homes for as long as possible has got to be a direction that we take. Unfortunately, the federal government have trying to force this position upon us where council might find it difficult to keep providing the service. But at this stage, we're still dealing with too many unknowns to come up with a decision one way or the other as to whether or not we continue to provide. But it was very obvious to me today that we have a group of employees that are very dedicated to their jobs, and they are very proud of the way in which they perform it. I understand that the federal government have got to keep providing funding for so many things, and there's just so much that they can control. But I also understand that the people that are making the decisions might not understand community in smaller country places. If you grow up and live in that one community all your life, it's very important to you. Whereas I guess, I'm only guessing, but I'm guessing that if you grow up in metropolitan cities, you don't know your next door neighbour, let alone 35 people down the road. So whatever we can do to maintain this service, I would be in support. But if it becomes too difficult, well, but as I said before, we're still dealing with the unknowns at this stage, and until the federal government give us some positive direction, I'm happy to move that we receive the report, and at this stage, that's where it needs to finish probably. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vance. Councillor Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to reiterate, I agree. We have such a fantastic aged care service and people providing that service across our shire. And if we can protect that in any which way and looking, once we do know the unknowns, they are known that we can somehow work towards being able to provide that sort of care. So thank you to all those staff who currently do that for some very vulnerable members of our community.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr. Councillor Clark.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. And firstly, a question, please, Ms. Bramwell. It's not written in the report, but I understand it is correct that the federal government haven't announced effectively an extension of the timeline for the program in its broadly current form until June 2024, rather than what we were working to when we did this in July, which was 2023.
Thank you, Councillor Clark, for the question. Yes, I can confirm that the Commonwealth have extended it for a further 12 months. To 30th of June 2024, but there's been no contracts issued or anything for that 12-month extension as yet, but yes.
So thank you, Ms. Bramwell. And I think the council here is in a pretty major decision process, and I wouldn't say we're necessarily willing participants. I think we're kind of a bit, I don't feel like there's a gun in my back, but I feel like I'm being pushed somewhere that I don't necessarily want to go. And that's the reality of the situation, because we're in a major piece of aged care reform, and we're a little bit player in the game. And that is our reality in the sense of things. It's important that we do note the fact that the extension, which I would call more a reprieve than a change of heart by the government, it actually means that we do have more options than we did have when we actually dealt with this decision. And that will come to us, I think, in the context of December. We do at least now have a few more choices. The challenge will be, I think, for our officers to actually inform council in the best way they can to make a good decision on the information that they have available. As Ms. Bramwell says, we won't have a contract. We won't know what the contract is. We won't know what the fees are and those types of things. But certainly, I think, as you say very much, Ms. Bramwell, December is our next big step in this process. But at least we've got a few more choices as of today.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. From my point of view, the most important people in this are the people we are trying to keep in their own homes. The aged community that we look after, the infirm, are the people we're trying to protect. And we're doing a damn good job of it at the present time. The next people that are important in this process are our staff. They're the ones doing the good job and creating the opportunity for people to remain at home, to live their life where they want to live. And thirdly is the council. And the council has the opportunity to make decisions in the best interests of the community, which take into account some financial decisions. With the extension of 12 months, we're fortunate because we believe we'll be able to continue serving our community, looking after our customers and doing so to the best of our ability. But as Councillor Clark said, we need more information, and that information hopefully will be with us in the near future. Thank you, councillors. All those in favour? Carried. Christmas closure period. Ms Bramwell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The purpose of this report is for Council to endorse the closure of the Pyrenees Shire Council offices and other arrangements during the 2021 Christmas and New Year holiday period. And yes, it is almost that time again. It's been the practice of Council to close during the Christmas New Year holiday period, and this closure enables staff to take a break with little impact on service delivery, and at the same time provides opportunity for staff to reduce outstanding annual leave and rostered day off balances. There is limited demand over our services over that period, and the closure is generally accepted by the community. A full detail of the planned service amendments are detailed in the report, but in summary, it's planned to have an end-of-year staff breakup function on Friday, the 16th of December 2022. That is a thank you to all staff for their contribution to the organisation over the past 12 months. And as in the last 2.5, 3 years, for 2022, the event is important to recognise the continued effort of our staff in another year of continuous change and challenge. On that Friday, all areas will close early, 12:30, to allow all staff to attend. Over the Christmas period, council offices will close at 3 p.m. on Friday, the 23rd of December, and will reopen on Tuesday as normal, 3rd of January, sorry, 2023. The depots will be likely to be closed from Thursday, the 22nd of December, and again reopen on Tuesday, the 3rd of January. The Resource Centre, Burford Resource Centre and Avoca Information Centre will be open. I've given you a schedule of times which will be publicised in the near future, but in essence, the public holidays will all be weekend hours, and it will be closed Christmas Day, Boxing Day and New Year's Day, and outside of those public holidays and the closures, it will be normal hours. Support staff will provide personal care services only between Christmas and New Year, and some assurance to the community that staff involved in emergency management will undertake their roles and responsibilities in accordance with our normal emergency management procedures, and council will have a roster over the holiday period. And of course, the depots will maintain a skeleton staff as well to operate over that period to ensure that essential services continue. The officer recommendation is that council endorses the closure of the Pyrenees Shire Council offices and other arrangements during the 2022, sorry, there's no there, Christmas, New Year holiday period as detailed in this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Bramwell. Moved Councillor Clark, seconded Councillor Ferrari. Any discussion, councillors? 2022 is in there now. I saw the pen working. All those in favour? Carried. Annual report 2022. Ms Bramwell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The purpose of this report is for council to receive the annual report for 2021-22. It's prepared in accordance with Section 98 of the Local Government Act and details the operational and financial activities of council throughout the last financial year. And it's required that we present this report to council before the end of October of each year. Excuse me. The annual report provides an insight into our operations and fulfills its council's statutory obligations. This year's report includes information on projects, the organisation, and has an increased focus on sharing images and stories from staff. The report assists in increasing the visibility of council, its staff and its work, and aims to improve transparency and understanding of what the organisation does and make it a bit more of an interesting document to the public. This annual report was the first year of reporting under the Council Plan 2021-2025, and the report will be made available on the council website and printed copies at front counters or made available upon request. A digital proof copy was provided to council prior to the meeting, and final draft copies were made available today. In the officer recommendation is that council receives the Pyrenees Shire Council Annual Report 2021-22 and makes the report available on council's website. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bramble. Councillors, we have a recommendation. Moved Councillor Vance, seconded Councillor Clark. Councillor Vance, no. Councillor Clark, no. Well, it says here that the Mayor must report on the implementation of council plan by presenting the annual report to a council meeting open to the public within 4 months of the end of the financial year. So we've made it. Oh, good. All those in favour? Carried. Community funding program. Ms. Bramwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to seek council endorsement of an amended community funding programme policy and note the 2022-23 community funding programme guidelines. Community funding represents one of the most immediate and direct ways that council can strengthen community and enables and influences community involvement, local leadership, community capacity building and development. It is important, however, that council administers its community funding programme through a transparent approach that supports good governance in the distribution of public funds. Council's provision of an accountable and transparent administrative policy framework supported by comprehensive guidelines ensures the fair and consistent distribution of those funds. Officers deliver a continuous improvement approach to council's funding programme with reviews in most years. An ongoing refinement ensures programme relevance, match of financial allocations to community demand, and efficiency in administration systems. A review was undertaken in 2022 with more detail of the recommendations is made in the body of the report, but in summary, we aim to improve internal efficiencies and community clarity of funding opportunities through consolidating and streamlining the programme structure into one system. This will overcome the challenge of the previous management of 5 separate grant and sponsorship programmes across various departments. It will also introduce a responsive grant category to manage fair and transparent resourcing of urgent or emerging requests that fall outside of programmed biannual rounds that were formerly done in an ad hoc basis. It will consolidate existing programmes under a centralised funding or management system to ensure consistency and improved community access. It will adopt a revised community funding policy that acts as an overarching policy and implement a renewed single community funding programme guideline that, although it is a lengthy document in its PDF format, online, or it is separated into easier managed components where you just go straight to the part of the programme that you are applying for. It creates a single reference point for community, providing consistency and removing the need for multiple guidelines and procedures. And there'll be a supporting procedure and supporting forms and documents to help our community. And there will be an updated acquittal process and annual evaluation programme. And for those who heard the word online application form there and gave them some consternation, we will be implementing processes where we support our community through that process, either at our front counters or by contacting our staff themselves. The 2022-23 community funding programme will be conducted twice, round 1 in October and round 2 in March 2023, with funds distributed prior to the end of December and July of the respective years. The responsive grants, which of course are not subject to the biannual programme, will close for assessments at 12 p.m. on the last Friday of each month. And so we'll do an assessment every month with notification coming to council on a regular basis. In conclusion, the continuous improvement of the community funding programme ensures council's investment into grants, sponsorship and subsidies is meeting identified objectives and contributing to positive outcomes throughout the Shire. And by implementing a series of better practice and compliance improvements, will advance the programme's community outcomes. It will integrate all of council's funding categories, delivering a new responsive category and implementing a single centralised funding management framework, which should mitigate risk and improve the customer experience. And it's the officer recommendation that council adopt the community funding policy as presented and note the 2022-23 community funding programme's guidelines. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bramwell. We have a recommendation. Can I get a mover? Moved Councillor Ferrari, seconded Councillor Clark. Councillor Ferrari. No, Councillor Clark.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. This is a bit of a new way forward, I suppose, for us in the context of what we've provided to community. And I certainly think the key thing is we've got a community that's quite used to our community grants, but we're certainly looking for some things that are quite new, more in a program and an activity sense than what we've probably sought in the past. So I certainly encourage everybody to have a look at the guidelines, get their submissions in, and council will be able to determine them before Christmas for them.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Any other councillors? All those in favour? Carried. Councillor reports and general business. Councillor Ferrari.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Had the number of activities as reported there in the activity report. I probably just want to spend a little bit of time on the flood event that we've had around the municipality. So I know Dan Tehan recently visited Beaufort and was shown around on a bit of a tour, but unfortunately I couldn't make that because I was dealing with the floods in another capacity. But I did take the opportunity on Sunday to drive around the municipality, not just Beaufort, but right around the municipality to have a look for myself and physically view some of the damage and some of the things that have happened because of the floods. And I was pretty shocked at how high the water did get in some places, in particular Avoca. But I was on the course of that journey, I did speak to quite a number of people. And I was really, really impressed with their responses and their resilience that they've displayed in relation to, what they've faced. And it was just, the attitude of, well, it's happened. We've got to have a clean up now. Let's get on with it. Let's get together and get it sorted out. And that seemed to be the theme right across the municipality. And I was really, really happy with that. And it was, in some ways, it was quite humbling, to be honest, because some people have lost a bit, and sometimes some people only need to lose a bit and it becomes a lot. So I was really impressed with the resilience displayed by the community. In that space, I'd like to acknowledge the work of the emergency services and the volunteers who provided such a dedicated response to the flood events. And that, of course, includes the council staff who had to drop it. You have to drop everything when these things happen and just respond to that. And a lot of times you just haven't got much time. So I really do appreciate the efforts by the people, not just on the outdoors, but also on the indoors, that are doing a lot of the administrative work and the emergency management work behind the scenes. There's a lot of work and maintenance to be undertaken across the municipality, and some of that we still, some probably hasn't even still come to our attention yet, but I'm sure I encourage people to continue to inform the council of things they find, and please ring in or send it in online, or do what you need to do to bring it to our attention. But I do ask that the community have some patience with responses, if with any responses, should they be longer than expected, because there's such a large volume of work to be done, spread across such a vast area. It's going to take us a while to get to it. So please have a little bit of patience with our workers. They will get to you, and they're doing their best under very trying circumstances. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Ferrari. Councillor Clark.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in terms of more general council activities, we might have mentioned at the last council meeting, but the Jala Pulford tour from September was a terrific little outing, and really nice to have Jala back to close the loop on that money we got back in 2019 for our small halls. Also, our community meeting in Ampey, that was a really good conversation with a really rational and reasonable community about, we've got a problem, what's the good solution? And we walked away with a good solution that council was able to implement, which was really good in that sense. Just in a community sense, the local land care group have been planting trees for a number of years at Lexington. This is the first year they've actually done a grow your own trees program. They've had a really good response. They've got rid of about packages for about people to grow about 4,000 trees for themselves and primarily plant on their own land. But also some of those will go back into the system for other land care members, which is a great little project.
Be nice and easy to dig at the moment.
Well, actually, I think you just kind of put your heel in the ground and pop the tree underneath it. It's a bit like that. I've actually got a direct seeding machine for the land care group, and I would normally have the trees planted by about the end of July. And I think by about the middle of November, I might be able to get out with it and do some planting. It's pretty damn wet. Just on an MOB context, obviously, we've had 2 state council meetings in the last couple of months, which is good. A number of end of financial year things. And of course, this last week, I've been very busy talking to the affected councils, particularly to our north, in the context as that flood works its way across the thing. And again, the bit that's really evident about that is, as it has been here, is those mayors just step up in their communities and they just take that leadership role. They're the go-to people to understand what's happening for communities, to get messages, and the council staff are out leading, coordinating, putting the materials behind the people that are filling the sandbags so that that stuff can keep going right across the state, which is just amazing. Just in terms of our own, I suppose, experience here with the floods, it's, you know, I thought it was unusual that we got a September and a January flood in 10-11. Lexington, of course, and Marlborough got 2 floods in 2 weeks, one last week and one the week before. The first one was a really unusual event. To get 90 mils of rain in Lexington in only about an hour and a half made it, I think, the worst flooding we've seen in the township itself, just because simply the water just concentrated there and couldn't get away. There's about 5 houses affected, and council have been out supporting those people in that sense of things. At Marlborough, we only had about 60 mil, but again, same thing, a couple of houses affected in Marlborough and a couple of houses even around in Ercildown. Useful precursor to this week, 100 mils nearly over the space of probably a day, 12, 14 hours. Not quite as bad, very similar, I think, to 2011 in terms of what we've seen as an event. And again, not really any more significant damage than probably what we'd had from that week before, which is a good thing. I certainly spent a bit of time that day before getting around checking what the drains were cleared and that we didn't have trees in places and things like that. And that was the best we could do. I don't think it necessarily changed anything on the day, unfortunately. But the community, as Councillor Ferrari said, has been just terrific in terms of supporting each other. Thank Council for the work they've done in getting sandbags and stuff like that. I think that's actually, it's a morale booster to see a couple of pallets full of sandbags outside your CFA. and know that there's some stuff there if you need it. I think that's a really important thing. And the follow-up that our staff have done with affected people, I think, was really important. The work the work that we've done after previous floods, I think, is also worth commenting on. I think particularly the Mount Emu Creek behind the prison, where we did a significant effort on that roadside bridge there, like concreted up kind of 40 metres either way, so it wouldn't wash away. We've had 2 floods over it since then, and apart from a little bit of road damage, it's standing up really well, similar to a number of culverts and those things that we've replaced around Evansford. So I think full credit to the staff for being able to be really smart about the investments we've made after those previous floods. And I think in that sense, our bridge network has stood up pretty well, and our road network in reasonable form. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Kerr.
Thank you. Again, I know the Councillor Clark just mentioned the tour with Jala Pulford. That was awesome to get around those beautiful communities. We've got such a diversity of communities, but with all a similar strain, and that they stick together and they love their communities. So that was wonderful. It was also terrific last week to be able to get up to Natty Yallick and meet with that community, although, of course, with a lot of things to consider after the first flooding event there, but now further and greater concerns that we'll need to look at. Across, it has been, I guess, the biggest disappointment, which has been alluded to already. The CEO mentioned that the Lake Goldsmith Steam Rally will not be able to be run because of the incredibly disappointing impact of the flooding in that area, having to cancel the next one. But we look forward to being able to support them so the subsequent rally will be able to be held again. There has been crop damage and a number of roads closed, of course, in the southern area. But even now, some that are open, many parts of those roads have been washed away, some quite significantly. So please be very, very careful on the roads and drive safely. And of course, some areas that are still flooding from remaining impact of water that's flowing from further afield, do not drive in those areas and be very careful and watch those indicators. There has been some impact on bridges too. So again, obey all signage, please, that's out there, and please be patient as you're getting to and from places. We also urge all those, as it's already been mentioned, I'd just like to urge again all those affected residents to lodge this information with council. Not only that council can also help you, but we may be able to point you in the right direction for further support or grants that may be available that you may not be aware of. Also, a huge thank you to all the residents who have been patient in regards to waste management, as recycling bins were unable to be collected yesterday in Snake Valley and surrounding areas, so due to the unsafe road conditions, but we will keep residents updated to when this collection can occur. Our Facebook page is a really great source of information and an instant source of information. If residents can follow that, that's really wonderful. But again, it's a little bit of a moving feast at the moment when that can happen. I do want to absolutely reiterate the heartening stories. There's been so many residents supporting each other in so many different ways across the Shire. In particular, some wonderful stories I heard. The southern end of our Shire, many of our residents there were assisting Skipton residents because they were severely affected, but allowing them to be able to evacuate people, but also gear from residents' houses and businesses so that they will be able to reinstate themselves when safe. Finally, though, we did mention this, and this again will have to be updated when it's able to happen, but there will be an opportunity for community grants information sessions to be held around the Shire. So once things settle down, please look out for an opportunity near you. So this again will be advertised on our Facebook and on our website. So our process for those grants, as was outlined in the meeting tonight, has become a lot more streamlined, but we still want to be able to help community groups make the most of those grants. So just finishing up, I really do wish everyone well as we move on from this event, as we remain vigilant, as Jim mentioned about the more wet weather predicted, but as we continue to clean up, to keep safe, look out for each other. And thank you for sticking together through this disruptive event. And we hope that in a few months, we'll know where we're going with clean up and getting the roads back to where they need to get to. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Kerr. Councillor Vance.
You get, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to start in a different direction. Just to make it official, I've had a request from the RSL in Landsborough, if it's possible to get a couple of bench seats, Mr. Gowans, with cast sides on. I know there's one in front of the general store that used to be a general store in Landsborough. And there's also one up at the resource centre. Just when the first opportunity arrives, failing that, they probably will apply for a grant to cover the costs. They've just been able to purchase 4 statuettes to put at the memorial site there in Landsborough, and they are very impressive. And soldiers standing with their heads bowed over their rifles, and they just want to beautify the area with some new seats if it's possible. We've got a small group of dedicated people in Landsborough, and I feel it's our role to support them as best we can. We've all had a session at both last week and a planning day. I'll mention that. One which we've been banging on for a long time about the overlays that sit on some of our rural hamlets that probably are gathering more momentum again from people who, not necessarily just from the city, but people who want to retire to the country and have a few acres, and our planning scheme's been a bit of a hurdle to jump. So we've had a good solid session on that. Councillor Ferrari and I had an audit committee meeting a fortnight ago, 3 weeks ago. The RCV Rural Councils Victoria had a forum at Dalesford, which was well attended and well received. I was quite proud of the management, the way they put it all together, and the guest speakers. We also got some good news from the state government that the ongoing funding for the rural councils is going to continue. So that's good news also. MAV State Council. I gave him a plug last month, but I didn't get to this one on last Friday, naturally enough, because I was watching Howards Creek rise at a rapid rate. The people around Charlton and these places, and even Natty Alec, they watch the water come up slowly, but I can tell you, when it comes off the Pyrenees range above Landsborough, it doesn't come up slowly, it comes up quickly. So much so I was at about 3:30, I left my farm. I'd made sure that all the sheep were on high ground the best I could, and the creek was about half full. I thought, we'd measured 90 mils of rain at that stage of the piece. I thought things are going to change for sure. I went home to Landsborough because there wasn't much else I could do, but I was standing with the proprietor of the shop that's had closed some time ago, watching the back creek, which we call a native creek, run behind the swimming pool, as we would be familiar with, start to meet up with the main creek in just below the fire station. And I thought, look out, she's on. There's going to be a few houses submerged. I gave the owner of the shop a little bit of assistance. He had a water pump where he pumps water from 2 large tanks to his house for his personal use. And the pump looked like it was going underwater, but we got a shovel underneath it and jacked it up about 4 inches, and that was enough to keep it high and dry, as luck happened. The native use creek started to go down, but then I went back down to my own property and I had an ocean of water. It had come up 4'6", 5 feet just in that hour, and it had spread over about 150 acres. Just the water went where it didn't go in 2011, purely on the fact that there were crops steering it away from where it would have normally gone. So I finished up with a nice little flow through my shearing shed and workshop. I had a pit there where I drain the oil out of vehicles, and the pit's full of water.
You can have a swim.
I could have had a swim, yeah. I'd have got up, but I mightn't have got back. And I also had the opportunity to go to the presentation of the Maryborough and Castlemaine football and netball league, which was a very pleasant evening. Had the pleasure of seeing my granddaughter almost get runner-up in netball. She finished up third, which was made her grandfather very proud. That's my lot. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, councillor Vance. One of the services during the week, the CFA came in to thank me on behalf of the Shire for the work that the Shire's staff have done to keep them supplied with sand for sandbags and other assistance that they've provided to the CFA so that they can provide sandbag around the town. CFA have done a wonderful job of not only providing the bags and the sand, but in a number of instances, filling them for elderly people who can't do it themselves, loading them into their car, all that sort of stuff, the stuff that communities do for one another. And I appreciated the thanks on behalf of the Shire. Last meeting, we went to the Ripmo Centre and had a youth leadership graduation from the Western Bulldogs, and it was very interesting to see the youth come forward for that. The following Sunday, I went to Cave Hill Creek for a junior camp. And again, we've got some wonderful youth out there. I'm not sure that I convinced anybody to move down the local government sphere, but you never know. If one or two of them decide that local government is their career, or maybe even one day a councillor, we could benefit from that. Very interesting to move around with Minister Pulford on the hall tour. The joy that she got out of seeing those small communities complete the circle and come up with halls that, again, are the lifeblood of those small communities. She loved the tour. And that's about all, other than to say, like everybody else, please stay safe. We are expecting further rain for a considerable length of time. And I've heard some terrible stories about people who have ignored their own safety, and by doing so have created safety issues for people that have to go and help them. Please think about that before you make those silly decisions to put yourself in danger, and then other people have to come and try and help you. There are confidential items to be discussed, so I'll close the meeting to members of the public pursuant to the provisions of section 4.1.1C of the Council's governance rules and section 66 of the Local Government Act 2020. The meeting will be closed to the public in order to consider those confidential items.
Thank you, councillors. Thank you, Executive.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We have a recommendation that the meeting be closed. Moved Councillor Clark, seconded Councillor Ferrari. All those in favour? Carried.